back off. Let's go back towards our drop spot and do exactly the same thing that we saw from them again, going back into the storm, using that launch pad and getting towards that Brawler's Battleground area where there is even more loot and, of course, more launch pads that they can use. It's not the only team doing it as well, Takata. Of course, Cammy and Seti are doing it a lot as well.
Yeah, we've had a lot of duos actually that have been making use of these launch pads and even the Wings of Icarus in these late games. And not even just the late games, the mid games to rotate. A combination of those launch pads with the Fizz, then also using the Wings of Icarus to launch yourself towards those mid game rotates. It has been working out incredibly well. We can see how Thomas HD and Queasy have been making use of that. But not only, like I said, in the mid games, even to get high ground, for example, if you're able to combo that with the Flowberry Fizz, it's something that we saw come out, I believe, in the first game. You could see Banyak and Swizzy here actually making use of exactly that. Banana, Flowberry combo, just look how high up they get, Mini.
I mean, look at Banyak here, right? This is Chap's first FNCS Grand Finals. He's thinking, right, we're on height, we're in a perfect position. And then Banyak comes in, spraying from up above, down below, and they get knocked out. That is definitely a strategy that we saw from those guys yesterday. Definitely a strategy I'm expecting to see more of today as well. And I'm interested to see how many more teams use those wings, because, of course, the drop rate of them has been buffed. So we're seeing that meta developing over the course of the weekend. I'm sure more teams will be using the wings tomorrow. Today.
Takata, we saw Swizzy and Banyak in particular using the Wings of Icarus during those endgame fights. And actually, I think it probably took us slightly by surprise because they're not known as the most accurate wings when you are trying to dive bomb onto your opponents. But obviously, this duo pulled it off. Do you think they'll be able to get away with that today?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to continue with their game plan they had. I mean, they didn't get zones gifted to them yesterday. We said it earlier. They had to travel the most distance out of any duo on EU yesterday, and they're still in first place. So even if they have to overcome hurdles, I think they can do it.
Amazing. Well, Takata thinks that Swizzy and Banyak are going to have a great day. We'll find out if our casters do as well, because we are ready, guys, to get into game number 7 of our Grand Finals.
The time has come. It is here, the conclusion of the EU FNCS Major 2 Grand Finals. And with how entertaining yesterday was all day long throughout those 6 games, I expect today to be even more on fire, more entertaining than ever before.
Yeah, ultimately, this is the time that every player wants to showcase what they can do, right? Of course, yesterday was a great place to build that platform, to set yourself up well for today. But we know with just how many points are on the table, it can get really crazy. What you see on the leaderboard now does not guarantee what you will see come game 12.
This is the start, game 7 throughout the overall FNCS, but game 1 on the day. And I hope, Levin, that everybody had taken the time after 6 games have ended to rewatch a lot of the VODs, rewatch a lot of the plays, the goods, the bads, and kind of take everything in stride, fix a lot of those mistakes, but figure out a way to replicate a lot of the successes. And Queasy and Thomas is going to be one of the biggest teams on that list to figure out what went right, replicate it, and what went wrong, and fix it very, very quickly, because they are triple contested yet again.
A bit of a scare here as well, because it looks like there's another team jumping into the fray. On social media before, Jake Buka and Cringe, who said they, was having some problems over towards Lavish Lair, potentially hinted at landing towards Mount Olympus, and maybe not doing so here in game 1. Again, a spot that's triple contested, adding another team into the mix, Jacob, doesn't seem the wisest.
Yeah, and throughout the day yesterday, you saw this fight kind of develop. You saw it kind of advance, went from right out of the gates, players trying to go for surge, to things gradually slowing down. And it caused just a weird dynamic over on that side of the map. But this one for sure, this is one I'm excited for.
Absolutely. And so Cringe and Jake Buka not landing at Mount Olympus. It doesn't look like they've landed here at Lavish Lair either. So uncontested for Cringe and Noms today. Again, that changes the dynamic of how they have to play the game. They don't have that early damage for Surge that they were benefiting so fruitfully from yesterday.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that we were kind of talk about as days progress. People switch drop spots, kind of play a little bingo, some would say, to see which way they're going to drop, as Veno looking like he was going to get aggressive right out of the gates on Podesai and Snazy. Unfortunately, he does choose to disengage, and by looking at the minimap, I really don't see Tayson or Veno's teammate anywhere, so he probably had to get a couple of those shots that he needed, disengage back on up, and as we tune into Veno, yeah, Tayson is lost already. So the struggles that Veno and Tayson for the early game will continue here today.
A very tough start. This is not how Venno would have wanted to be going into game one, especially considering these guys ultimately have to have a big comeback day, right? A lot of expectations going into the weekend where that these guys would be near the top of the leaderboards. It hasn't quite panned out that way. And Podesai and Snazy, I'm sure, will be incredibly motivated to continue to put a stain on this FNCS for Venno and Tayson. Yeah, they're fully just chasing. they don't want to give these guys a chance to get back into this game at all.
I mean, you can imagine how hard it is to kind of take down Tayson once. Now imagine Venno gets the reboot. You got to take him down yet again. But I think Podesai and Snazy know, judging by their loadout, the lack of materials, there's only so far you can actually go on a chase like this before it becomes more and more risky. And you really don't get anything out of it, even if you do get that elimination onto someone like Venno. So I do like the heads-up play for them to kind of disengage, backtrack in their steps, and finish looting up so they can have a more successful early in the mid-game.
Fibo and Valry in this Grimgate area. And Malabuka isn't happy about it one bit. He wants to try and push them away. Mustache on the other side of Grim has initiated that boss fight, and so he's eager to get the medallion and the shotgun. He knows just how powerful it can be for them in fights like this one.
I just want to see them convert just a little bit more on having that medallion and being able to stretch it just a little bit further into these end games. Yeah, they got 7th while contested, but having such an arsenal at your disposal, you got to be able to kind of take advantage just a little further. And this fight between them two is kind of very, very standard. They don't necessarily go 50-50, take each other out. Velry and Firebro do tend to kind of hide up towards the top, build up, and then that's where they kind of play the rest of their game out. Bettini and Chap, another surprising duo, lighting up the elimination feed, not only almost all day yesterday, but throughout the semifinals in general. They're one of the teams that we kind of looked at, maybe a top 5, potential to win it all. And with 1.5 point multiplier here today, they're definitely going to have to pick up the pace, not only in eliminations, but be a little bit more successful, making it farther into these games.
Absolutely. When you look at the fighting prowess of Chapintini, they pose a threat in box fights against anybody. Fringe and Noms now getting aggressive towards Jakey and Twy, and I think we expected to see this, right? When you're playing out of Lavish Lair and you're not contested, you gotta be eager for surge. You have to roam out of your POI to deal some damage, and that's exactly what they'll do here. Cringe and Noms are one of the better fighting teams, and so they won't shy away from a fight.
Especially with how well they were doing yesterday. You kind of spoke on it and touched on it a little bit, and that's how you start to build that confidence. It's very, very important for a lot of the teams and players here today to be able to channel that momentum from day one and continue it on here in day 2. And I like the idea because not only they're getting surge from fighting a team like Jake and Twy, but they're a potential bunker in this direction as well. Yes, some other teams might try to move in this direction, but at least if you're able to take this team out early, you see nobody else in the minimap trying to third party this could be a huge opportunity, but Noms just over peaks. He gets sniped, and this is their green light to go.
And these kind of mechanical errors can be the difference maker. If they go down now, again, they start looking at advantage they have in the leaderboard. It starts dwindling away. But Cringe won't be thinking about that right now. He'll be thinking about how he can keep his team in the game.
Yeah, Noms really has only one decision. As soon as he went down, he knew he couldn't save him. So he just quickly disengaged using the Flowberry Fizz to create as much distance as possible. Twy just, oh my, reading that play like a book. He knew he was spraying the covers. He knew he was going to break it. And just perfect timing. And you can see that today getting a little bit more active right out of the gates. Trexer, Glove Sheet being forced in a defensive position by Relvis and Buell. Great shots to really start this fight out. But the longer this one takes, unlike the other one on the other side of Lavish Layer, there are more third and fourth party potentials moving in and closing the distance themselves.
Bull and Relvis did incredibly well last games. And I think a lot of people questioned how they're going to fare with zones that maybe aren't as favorable. I think yesterday, if you had to say which team had the most favorable zones across all 6 games, you probably would have attributed that to them. And so now it's time to see where the challenge comes. Or maybe they just keep getting zones, Jacob, and we're laughing at the end of the 12 games. Either way, they'll be prepared. And this fight is the first step to doing so. Trexer taking a big chunk of damage. And that's clearly coming from Eclipse and Dexy, the third party in the distance.
Yeah, we're from Rebels Roost. They're making their presence known finally. And They know that knock is coming in just now, and they get the double elimination as Eclipse persistence actually pays off, taking out Trexer as well, but a whole nother team. Finn and his duo just now moving in, kind of forcing a lot of displacement here out of this fight, where they once thought they were safe, where they once they were fighting another team, a couple of third parties, and another shot coming in from the distance to Buell. It's just going through so much right now when things were looking so good a moment ago.
And Buell and Relvis will be forced to watch this game. And I mean, this right now, Jacob, is the biggest test for teams who, you know, you would put in that sort of category of, oh, they've surprised us on day one. They're doing much better than expected. How do they respond to the adversity of having a hitch in the road early on?
I like the way you asked the question, because it's easy to stay positive and stay confident when things are going well. But how do you pick yourself back up when things aren't necessarily going your way? And that's going to be the first test I think they'll be facing all weekend, because they're also one of the teams that didn't really have to deal with Surge because they were so proactive, especially with that off-spawn fight. As you switch on over, one that was kind of quick out of the gates, a player getting eliminated. Veno able to get Tayson back. We saw Tayson was down and out early on. Veno was able to disengage far away from fencing fields at that. So interesting decision enough for him to not only get the reboot, but for them to backtrack all the way back on over to fencing fields. And already with shots like that, it's paying off.
I think one of the key things I want to see from Veno and Tayson is them sort of just pop off, frag out. Minimano was highlighting just a lack of refreshes, a lack of eliminations in the deeper stages of the game. I think some of their problems come from the earlier parts of the game, right? Mid-game, being able to get to end-game stacked, but we know what Veno can do when he's on his best. He's one of the most prolific fighters we've ever seen. Surprise, surprise. Vanyak and Swizzy here in the storm, using the wings to their benefit just to get around. I mean, this is a recipe for success we've seen a bunch of teams tap into, and it is definitely benefiting our first place team right now.
Yeah, and just the way players are able to kind of utilize it. Pause for a second on one thought. Cringe still looking like he's going through a battlefield, the one that kind of left over from Lavish Layer, trying to scrap together whatever he can to continue to spread that distance. But I just wonder, does he even know that they're still kind of eyeing him, they're tracking him? Doesn't look like they're going to go after him this time around, so Cringe does have a legitimate chance to get Noms back into the game. But it's definitely not going to be easy because he's moving closer and closer in towards the zone, to where a lot of the people that landed towards the north will end up in this position, just like the players towards the east.
100%. A reboot's going to be hard to pull off here, though. You can see on the minimap all the teams sort of around. Jakey and Twy, I think, will probably be distracted by the bunker, but some of those other teams towards the west, they hear this reboot go off, they will be eagerly awaiting.
Sangilde and, well, I was going to say Marius, but it looks like he's already taken down. Underworld not necessarily faring well for this duo so far on the day yesterday. They've had a ton of shines and shining moments to where you know they have what it takes to pop off. It's just continuously game after game in a contested drop like the Underworld. They haven't been able to put it together on a consistent basis. So I'm just hoping for day two, even though Marius is already down, Sangilde, there's a lot of space for him in and around the Underworld for him to attempt the reboot and get his teammate back. I just want to see them start to pick up that pace that we know that they can achieve.
And again, more of those Storm plays. The analysts broke it down. This is what Queasy and Thomas are doing to just bypass mid-games completely, Jacob. I mean, we're seeing a lot of these northern zones, northwestern zones. If you're a team like Thomas and Queasy, rotating all the way there from Mount Olympus, it's tough, right? You end up using a lot of materials, a lot of your shields to get by. So they've decided, yeah, we don't want to do all that. We're just going to stay in the storm, use the wings to get into better spots throughout the storm. We can go through POIs like this here in Reckless Railways and pick up some extra loot, some extra shields. You can cap our materials as well as we go by. And then we can get into, you know, 6th, 7th zone, stacked, all the mats in the world, and still be up on Surge. I mean, it's pretty ingenious from them. I think the big thing was over the past week, Queasy has emphasized how he's just figured out how to play the game, right? A lot of their poor performances this season, he was sort of playing tournaments blind, didn't know what to do, but now they have a better idea, better understanding. Near miss there from Seti.
What's surprising enough, 288 points, how well Seti and Cammy are doing. It's sometimes they're in situations like this where you almost can count them out. Things look bleak, staying so far in zone, and even one of them down, playing as a solo. But so far this weekend, they have shown so much adversity, so much resilience to come back from situations like this. And the reboot, and you were kind of mentioning Queasy and Thomas figuring things out, adapting, and I think that was one of the biggest things that a lot of teams have figured out, that we're not going to heal-offs as consistent as we were before. So instead of being one of those teams where you have to get out of zone, you get on the congested edge, things don't work out for you, you're now able to stay in the zone much longer than you ever have from some of these seasons past, which gives them a lot more time to think and figure out these strategies. And you give teams like Queasy, Thomas, Seti, Cammy, the OGs, the more experienced players time to think. I think that is what's going to be the downfall for other players in the lobby today, when you give them opportunities, when you give them time.
100%. I think the big thing now, though, is that who's been hitting the VODs last night, right? If you went into them, you would be able to see what these guys are doing. If other teams decide to start playing Storm as well, which I think we may see, it becomes, you know, less of an advantage, right? Now you're worried about someone being behind you while you're in the storm, and it gets all messy. That's the beauty of the grand finals, right? The meta, the game, it evolves as we head through these 12 games. Cringe still kicking it here as a solo. Yeah, my suspicions are correct. It wasn't going to be as simple as picking up that reboot card. He's going to have to fight this one out solo. And a fight against Cheeps won't be easy. Cheeps never shies away from a box fight. Oh, do they know? They're wary of it. They place the wall before they go through.
Very, very careful. Great move by Crims, but he finally gets boxed off. One of the pathways is going to be cut off, but he's quickly thinking on the fly. And Cringe, the only downfall here is he hasn't really been able to get too many opportunities to get Surge, but the fact that he's been alive as a solo for so long, running around, playing a huge game of hide and seek where they finally find him on the other side. That's Cheeps and Turtle that lands such a good first shot, but he's ready to start fighting back, no longer trying to run around and take the fight to Cheeps as he lands just another good shot, backing down his opponent, and he's making Cheeps and Turtle second guess. Is this a fight they want to start and finish, or is this a situation they want to run from, as Cringe once again lands a shot on the run?
Cringe is playing this phenomenally. He's really playing like someone who knows the POI, and they just run out of patience. Cheeps and Turtle decided, okay, we need to just try pinch this guy. I'm tired of just trying to run at him. And when they go for the pinch, he realizes, okay, wait, they're both playing as solos. Let me try isolate a 1v1 and deal significant damage onto them. Forces them back a bit.
Cammy goes down, but just by judging that Cammy even had a chance to go down, at least said he had a reboot opportunity. He got his teammate back, gave them a fighting chance, but that one is going to hurt. We talked about the 1.5 times multiplier. They are definitely one of the teams you look at have a consistent day. They started with 288 points in third place, so they can only go down from here. And that puts a lot more pressure on them in the last 5 games of the day for them to really pick up the aggression, pick up the pace, and try to figure out a way to get those eliminations. Joan Trulex, team that's just been progressively getting better. I think we all know what type of performance they had throughout the semifinals. Really waiting to the last moment to punch their ticket to Grands, but since then they have not looked back. Seems like a lot of their experience, a lot of their planning was to come into a set lobby just like this. They found at least one elimination so far. Even though Storm Surge is active, it's all about staying above that threshold. Whether it's by 300 or 1, you want to give yourself that chance to not have to just run around and put yourself into desperate situations looking for Storm Surge yourself. But glad to see that Noms is back in the game. Enough running around the map for Cringe. He's given himself a chance now to bring this duo power back into the game, in which they've been using almost all weekend long to give himself that second place.
I mean, you use the word power. I think that's generous, right? Well, how much power would they really have? Lack of materials, lack of loot. Down on Surge as well. They might just be easy pickings for any team that is sitting here on the edge of zone. They're going to have to really get creative to push themselves back into this game. You know, that lightning bolt in hand, I think Cringe might just have some interesting intentions here. Yeah, he's looking to cook up something. He has his eyes set on ruining someone's game, and it might just be Vico and Pinks.
Any damage is better than none. He actually lands that third and final Thunderbolt. About 80 shield. That's going to get him above the threshold. And like I said, whether if it's 6 or 600, that's where you want to be, because instantly they fall below. Storm Surge activates. Down goes Noms. Unfortunate circumstances for Cringe, because now he's once again left as a solo. The only blessing he has going for him right now is he is center zone on this 50-50. He just needs a moment to breathe, an opportunity to put that DMR to use to try to get some shots at anybody rotating in.
And again, I don't want to harp on this, right? But that was the biggest question about them. Now, today, uncontested. How will they fare with Surge? And the first game isn't looking as sweet as it was yesterday, right? So either this becomes a reoccurring problem for them, or maybe just a blip in the long 12 games we have. A replay of Malabuka here over towards Grim Gate. Fighting as he does best, takes down the other Cringe. But he's still playing this one as a solo. Mustache is down.
Isn't necessarily too bad of a situation, because while everybody else here is rotating the zone, trying to get their spot so they're not the last ones left, that's given a lot of space and a lot of freedom for Malabuka to actually go for the reboot or reposition with any of these launch pads on top of Reef Island to a reboot that he so chooses. As we tune on board first place, Swizzy, Vanya just going through a little bit of struggles here, getting targeted around the lobby. It does look like they're going to be able to hold their ground momentarily. 500 damage above that Storm Surge threshold. They really have nothing to worry about other than the rotations.
Yeah, and I've loved watching these guys play. So aggressive. A lot of the time it feels like watching what Malabuka and Mustache would be like if they decided to be a hype team, right? And commit to that type of play style. Very ruthless, very forceful, but it works out.
I'll just toe tagging some players, just getting damaged any way that he can. And this is where you're going to see it really come into play. As this zone does move a little bit up those mountains, you see the flow berries, you see the wings of Icarus, something that's been popularized so much this weekend. That's going to be the biggest tool in their tool belt, and it's been the biggest tool with the zones that they've had all 6 games yesterday in finding that success. Now Malabuka, we saw him already by himself. He was able to at least find one elimination, help in terms of Surge, and he lines up another snipe and another knock. So it's really up to him if he wants to go for it, because he's created so much space for himself and he's commanded so much respect, but only so much as how he instantly goes in, along with the help of the Frizzy, to take down Malabuka and end the Mustache Malabuka run in game 1.
Back to the drawing board for those two. Benno and Tayson in a much less congested spot. Not the pressures of having a bunch of teams around them. They can just rotate towards zone relatively freely.